Alright, welcome back everybody. It's Falcon here again for another tier list video. Yesterday I made a updated Tekken difficulty tier list. And today I decided that I will now talk about my updated Soul Calibur difficulty tier list. Now, I've actually made a lot more changes to this tier list than I did to the Tekken tier list. And that's because, like I've said before, I have gained more information of the game, and there was some stuff that I didn't know about. There were some characters that I wasn't really sure about. So, I hope this tier list is a little bit more accurate than maybe my previous one. But that, I'm learning everything. There might be I might have to make other changes to this tier list as well. But, we'll see what we got. And, let's just get right into it. Why not? So, we all have the, same 5 categories that I always have. Let's just start off with very hard. Now, the only character change that I put here is actually surprisingly Tira. Now, we'll get to her, though. So, first, Maxi. Everyone in this tier list is the same except Tira. But Maxi, I still think, is a very hard character to play. But also a very hard character to fight against. He has a lot of stances, a lot of strings, mix-ups, GIs, Heaven's Guard. He has a lot of stuff that you would want to know. And excuse me, I guess this does throw into the to the face of your opponent that who has to deal with all these strings, which is also hard on your opponent, but it is also hard for yourself. He doesn't take much execution, but you do need to know the stances. You do need to know, he has a lot of stuff going on, and I also don't consider him to be a very good character. I don't consider him to be a very strong character. So, if you're playing against someone who doesn't know this matchup, again, you can just mash buttons and basically win. But when you're fighting people who know this matchup and know when to 2K you and when to back away, step, when they know this stuff, I think Maxi is much, much harder to use. And you still need to know, what stance you're in, what moves you have access to. Kind of reminds me of Hordong, where you have strong moves, but a decent amount of them are in stances. Maybe outside of 6A plus B, which is a really cheap move. And also, knowing his soul charge attacks, knowing the 7 rings is also worth knowing. Knowing how to use his soul attack, he has a very solid soul attack. It is complicated overall, in my opinion, to play a very, very solid Maxi. Raphael. I still think Raphael is a very hard character. A character where you have to use a lot of his toolkit. He doesn't just have a few moves that you can just spam. You need to use a lot of his toolkit. You need to know, the prep stance. You need to know what moves you have access to. He also does demand pretty high execution. He's one of the higher demanding execution characters in the game. He doesn't take as much execution as, let's say, like a Mishima and Tekken, but if we're talking about Soul Calibur execution, it is easier than Tekken execution, like I said in the previous tier list. But yeah, Raphael is demanding in execution. And yeah, he's not for everyone. This is a character that is definitely not easy to play. He's a very, very, very super strong character, absolutely. I still think he's very strong, absolutely. But you need to know what you're doing if you want to really succeed with Raphael. You need to use a lot of moves, and he's high demanding in execution. Taki, kind of the same thing when it comes to execution. She does have some execution things that you do need to know. You need to know, again, what moves you have access to. You need to know some of the, you need to know possession, how can you use possession well, because, possession most of the time can just be swatted out of, more specifically on block. So you need to know, when you can really take use into possession, because against good players, most of them will just swat it out. Again, she is very tough to play because if the opponent knows this matchup, it's very hard to play Taki. Very, very difficult. She doesn't have, she has some decent moves, like 668 plus B is a good move. Her bomb is a good move, like A plus B bomb. Her 3B is very good. 4BA is good. She has good punishment also, which is very good, but it's very demanding in execution. Like A6, that just frame, it's hard to do. But if you can do it consistently, it's the best 10-frame punish in the game, arguably. It's top 3, easily. But yeah, there is execution for Taki, and you do need to know some other things as well. You need to know also that she does have some staggers on some of her moves on whiff, more specifically possession B. Gotta be careful because if that whiffs, she staggers. I think Natsu did the same thing in Soul Calibur 5 though. I don't remember though. But yeah, not an easy character. And you also need to know when you can use her chip damage attacks. She has pretty good chip damage, and it's important to know that as well. Next we have Tira, and like I said before, this tier list is not like in direct order. I'm not sitting here saying that Maxi is the hardest character in the game. I do not think he is, but it's just, you know, I'm just putting them in places. But next we have Tira. Now Tira, last time I put her in average tier. The main reason why I put her in average tier is because, like, one, I didn't really know too much about the character myself, so I didn't really know exactly where to place her. I didn't think she was an easy character to play by any means, but I just didn't know how hard she really was. And also, she isn't very high demanding in execution, so I'm like, maybe she's average. But after playing her a little bit more and after talking to people, I have come to the conclusion that she's actually a very tough character to play. The reason why I think this is, one, like, you have two different, like, moods, jolly and gloomy. You need to know how to use both of those moods. You can't really stick to just one mood because Jolly Tira is not that good. She doesn't have very good frame data. Her frame data is actually terrible in a Jolly. She just isn't very scary in Jolly. In Gloomy, she's much more scarier, but I don't think you gain meter, I think. You don't gain much meter, and I think you may lose something else, but I don't remember everything. But yeah, you need to know what mood you're in. You need to know the good time when you can swap. You need to know if you do swap, what combos you have, like what moves you have access to. So overall, it is overall pretty complicated to play Tira, like, really, really well. But if you can play it very well, Tira, she is a very solid character, for sure. Very, very solid. If you know how to, you know, how effectively you can use both moods, she is a very rewarding character. But knowing all these things, you know, it's not easy. And also knowing, like, when you can have access to Coda, and when you can taunt to a mood swap, you know, all this stuff it's not easy to remember. So that's really the reason why I did decide to put her up actually 2 tiers. Because, you know, the moods, you know, you need to know what you're in, you need to know what moves you have access to, and that is not easy. Because you have almost two different characters in Gloomy and Jolly. So those are my thoughts on Tira. Hilda, I still think, is a tough character to play. She is a charge character. Does take some execution. You need to know what tools are more appropriate from what range you're at, which isn't easy. Again, the charging stuff, you know, not easy to really apply. Other than that, other than those things, but all that stuff is tough to know. She's a very solid character right now, for sure. Again, this is another character I don't know, like, 100% every single thing. Not the super expert, but I have played her, and I do know that she's not easy. She's definitely absolutely harder than average. I could see her going down into hard, but honestly, in my personal opinion, I think she is very hard, especially for a game like Soul Calibur 6. And finally, we have Setsuko. Setsuko is definitely very, very tough. She's very high demanding in execution. Again, like I said, very high demanding in execution. She has very interesting tools that you do need to know about. You need to know about her 3 modes that she has. Like when you, let's say, counter hit someone multiple times, I think you get a really good 4-4 B+ K-stab. You need to know, like, these things. You need to know a few things. Again, very high demanding in execution. You need to know how to do the just frames, because if you can't do the just frames and just do the easy inputs, you build almost no meter, that's a big deal. This game is very dependent on meter, so, and her soul charge is very, very good, and her soul attack is very solid as well. So not being able to have access to those as much as other characters, you know, it's not easy. And again, super high demanding execution, because, like I said, if you just do these inputs, you're not getting any meter, and you're getting less damage. So, yeah, she's a character. Yeah, she's not for everyone. Another character like Raphael, and Hilda also, she's not a character for everyone. There will be people who will not like this character. There are people that will think that she's almost impossible to use. But if you can get the just frames, if you can get the execution and know how to get your meter, she is, again, very, very powerful character. For sure. Very powerful. Even with the nerfs that she has been receiving over the past few patches. So that is my very hard category. Now we're going to move on to hard. At first up, we got Amy here. And, you know, this was a very interesting pick. Because my last tier list, I actually put her in easy. The reason why I put her in easy was just because... And this was, you know, before the patches where she was nerfed. She, I thought, was super, super strong. And she has some dumb attacks that I don't like. 4AA I still think is super annoying, even with the nerf. Her 3A is stupid good. She has a vertical I-10, which is huge. Her 6B is incredible. It's arguably the best I-10 in the game. Her roses, once you get all rose Amy... Honestly, I could see her actually being an easier average tier. She's kind of brain dead in all roses. However, if we're looking at the entire character, you got to realize that, you know, you still need to know some things with her. She isn't really demanding an execution. I have been playing, actually, I played Amy recently. She didn't really have any execution heavy things. She had maybe some, nothing crazy. But you do need to know the stances. You need to know... You know, if you don't have the roses, if you can't get roses on your opponent, she's not the best character, and it does make her a lot harder to use. But once you get all roses, that's when I think she becomes easier to use. But no rose Amy is a very tough character to play, I will say that. But still, like I said, still a monster character, for sure. But there are some things you do need to know, and I will take that into consideration, especially after me playing a little bit with her. But yeah, all rose Amy, super good. Next we have Cervantes. Cervantes didn't really move anywhere. I still think he's hard. Has some execution things with core circle back B, the fast input. I don't know is it DER or DOR? I don't remember what it's called. But that whiff punish does take execution. He has some execution heavy things. But other than that execution with the whiff punishing and even with the combos, I don't see anything too crazy hard with him. You don't need to use a lot of moves with Cervantes. He has a good soul charge, good meter stuff. His movement is excellent. But the only reason really why I put him in hard is that he does have some execution requirements, especially for Soul Calibur. You know, he has execution. That's kind of why he's in hard. But it's not like super hard like Raphael or Taki or nothing like that. Like, I don't think he's on the level with those characters. But yeah, not the easiest character in the world to play. You do need to know some of what you're doing. Ivy. Oh boy, Ivy. Now, listen, I put Ivy in scrub mode really because of the online community. I think Ivy is a very toxic character online, and I still think that. I hate fighting this character online. She's cancerous. One of my least favorite characters to fight. She does have a lot of brain dead moves, I will say that, at farther ranges. Her command throws are absolutely stupid. Even with the nerf, I still think her throws are ridiculously good. And she does have some decent stuff overall. And I don't think she's super high demanding in execution. She has some things that are execution, but again, not that much. But the main reason why I actually put her up quite a few tiers is for the simple fact that once you get in Ivy's face, I just don't see her as a super, super good character. I think she does crumble a little bit because she doesn't have an I-12 down A. Her down A is 16 frames, which is, you know, that is a problem. She doesn't have super, super strong fan moves. When people are in your face with Ivy, there's just not a whole lot she can really do. She has some buttons that she can use, but it's just, you know, she can struggle a little bit more than other characters can. And that's why she's definitely not easy. But at further ranges, I will admit, she is kind of brain dead. But once you're in Ivy's face, I really feel like she has problems. She does have a little bit of defensive problems, which is really the reason why I did push her up. And she has some execution. Some, not a lot, but some. So that's really why I put her in hard. Again, I could move her down to average. But, you know, she does have some defensive problems, and I will give that to Ivy players. I'll give that to you guys. Even though I still think some of y'all are cancerous. Let's just see. Is this going on? Yeah, it is. Okay, next up we got Nightmare. Nightmare, again, hasn't really moved. Some people don't understand why I put Nightmare in hard. He's a very strong character right now, especially with the buffs he's been receiving. He does take a little bit of execution when it comes to, like, let's say, AGA. You know, it's not the easiest move in the world to execute perfectly. He has some dumbass, what is it? A Night Terror charge is super brain dead, I'll be honest. His armor moves are also pretty fucking irritating to deal with, especially if you're not in range. But the reason why I put Nightmare in hard, like I said last time, is that he is a very sluggish character to get going. Like, if you're fighting against a very smart, mashy opponent that is smart and does a lot of lows, so you can't really do your armor moves, Nightmare really does have a hard time. He is pretty sluggish. He does not have an I-12 at all. His fastest move is 14 frames, which is a big problem. That's a huge weakness for him. That's probably arguably his biggest weakness. He can't punish minus 12 moves, which, again, big problem. I mean, he can take his turn back, but it's like you're not getting guaranteed damage. So let's say with Kilik, with Kilik I could spam 2-2-B all day long, because he can't punish it. It's minus 12. Really, really good. And there's many different examples. But again, Nightmare, if the opponent's good, this character has some defensive issues, and he doesn't have the best frame. He has some pretty wacky frame data. So because of that, and his movement isn't the best because he's a bigger character, he's not easy to play. But if you have good defense and good fundamentals, Nightmare is a monster. And if you can keep people out, this character is really fucking annoying. Really annoying. But taking into consideration, again, like Ivy, he does have defensive issues. But I think it's even worse because he doesn't have any I-12 move at all. Well, Ivy does have her standing K, and I think her AA or AK or whatever. So Nightmare, I think, can have a hard time in close range. Even with the, whatever they're called, fucking armor moves, right. My bad. Next up we got Talon. I've actually just started playing Talon. She's definitely not easy to play. She does have a lot of bullshit strings and stances that the opponent is going to have to know. So she can be a knowledge check for sure. But again, same thing with you. You do need to know the stances. You do need to know some things to play a successful Talon. She has some execution. Again, nothing too crazy. And she also has severe range issues. I've noticed that, especially when I started playing her yesterday. She does have some range issues. So if you're fighting against someone who's good at keeping out, I think Talon really can have a hard time getting in. Even with the buff that she got to her forward movement is amazing. Even with that, it's still not easy to get in. And the moves that she does have to get in are either high or linear, and they're mostly kind of predictable. Most people use 66B or 66A to come in, which are both highs. So, and 66K, which is the mid, but it's too slow. It's too slow to catch people, and it's linear, so I think she can have a hard time there. And again, you need to know the stances. You do need to know some things to play a successful Talon. But again, I wouldn't consider her super ultra mega hard because she got some good shit in this recent patch. I think she's a very solid character right now. But again, definitely harder than average. Voldo, I actually originally had Voldo in very hard. I remember now. Yeah, Voldo originally I had in very hard. The reason why I decided to drop him a tier is really because he has some execution. Again, not too much execution. Again, there are stances you need to know. You need to know the Mantis stuff and the back turn stuff, but I don't find it as hard as I originally thought. Again, I do consider him slightly harder than average for sure. Again, you need to know what moves you have access to. But other than that, I can't really say Voldo's a super hard character. He has some gimmicks. He has some things that good Voldos use, but you don't really need it. Like the A plus K, like a dance thing, or that people do, like the counter reversal and shit like that. You don't 100% need it, but it's definitely there if you want it. And his soul charge is gimmicky. He's not a good character right now at all, honestly. I mean, he's not bad, but he's not good at all, in my opinion. So he's, especially at high levels of play, I do consider Voldo to be very, very tough to play. But in most levels, people don't know this matchup, and you can stomp through people. I could think about putting Voldo back in very hard, but, he's definitely harder than average, though, for sure. But I could see him going back up to very hard, because I'm still, I was kind of debating, should he go very hard or hard? Not 100% sure. But he's definitely not easy. Next, we have Haramaru. This hasn't changed. You need to know the cancels he has. You need to know some of his tools. Against good players, I think you can struggle a little bit because he's not the most threatening character, in my opinion. Again, need to know some things. Need to have some kind of execution. A lot of people don't know the matchup, though, so that's, that helps you for sure. Could definitely help you win some matches. But yeah, again, he has also his big slashes. You need to know how those work, especially on block. He has stuff in soul charge that's very interesting. He has 2 different soul charges, which is, with the one with the big-ass slash he has, that does a bunch of damage depending on, the soul charge you have. And then he has a generic soul charge. You do need to know a few things to play a successful Haramaru. He's not easy. And then we have Huang. Huang, the reason why I put him in a hard is not necessarily just because of the stances. Again, he does have a lot of stuff going on. He's not the hardest character, though. Like, he has a lot of stances and weird mechanics with his orbs and his I don't know what the fuck they're called. I don't remember, but you use certain moves and the number goes down, and if it's 0 or negative, you lose health or meter or some shit like that. I think y'all know what I'm talking about if you know Huang. That's stuff you do need to know. Again, the stances, you don't 100% need every single stance in the world. He has a lot of gimmicks that you don't really need. You do need to have good fundamentals, though, with this character, because he has some decent fundamental tools. But yeah, he's definitely not easy to pick up. You do need to know a few things. Not really much execution, honestly. He doesn't really have any execution, or much crazy execution that I'm aware of. His soul charge, knowing, when to use the Iron Will orb. It's not easy. Need to know some things. You need to know his frame data, because his frame data on hit especially is not good. Especially when I was playing him, when I was hitting the opponent, most people would just interrupt me even if I was trying to do a down A or something. Or maybe a 4AA. Like, his frames on hit, his frame just is not very good. He doesn't have very good frame data, which is a problem. For sure. And again, you need to know when I can use a power-up kind of move. Should I sacrifice my health in the next round? Like, this stuff is it's not easy to know. It's not easy. Again, you don't 100% need it, but, it's definitely something you could definitely use. And he also gets some nice buffs with the orbs, which is, pretty nice, I guess. But no one knows the matchup, basically. He's the newest character. Very few people are going to 100% know this matchup. You're probably going to beat up on most people with this character that, don't know what the fuck they're doing. So, I guess that helps you. Alright, now we're going to move on to the average tier. 2B. 2B is a character I originally had in hard. I still don't think she's super easy to play, but honestly, if we're being real, she is relatively easy to pick up and play. She has a lot of strings that people aren't going to know, and it's relatively easy to do. She only really has one stance you really need to know, which is HES, or AGS, yeah, AGS, which again, isn't the hardest stance to figure out. She doesn't take much execution also. And again, another character where you can destroy people online. Again, this is a character who some people really struggle with the matchup. However, the reason why I put her in average instead of easy is because her frame data sucks. Her frame data is awful. And when people know this matchup, I think 2B is, another very tough character to play, which is really the reason why I put her at hard. That was really the reason. But I could see her moving down to average, which I did move her down, because overall she is relatively easy to pick up. I guess that's how somewhat she's designed. But in higher levels of play, she is not easy to play. Kind of reminds me a little bit of Lars from Tekken. Reminds me of him a lot. So, she's an interesting design. I decided to put her in average because of the, easy to pick up, but harder to play in higher levels of play. I could drop her down to easy, for sure. Definitely could. Possible. Next up, we got Aswell. Aswell, I originally had an easy tier. Now, I guess maybe because I was being kind of salty with him. This is another character I really don't like fighting, especially when I don't know what my opponent's stance, like if he's in axe or if he's in spear or sword or whatever. It's pretty fucking annoying, I'll be honest. He is pretty annoying to fight, I will say that. And the reason why I put him in average, though, like, he's not hard, because he doesn't have almost any execution requirements. His combos are piss easy. And his soul charge is pretty it's really good soul charge. But the reason why I put him in average, I decided to move him up a tier, is for the simple fact that you also need to know, like, what stance you're in, and you need to know what really good tools you have access to. Like an axe, you have the axe low, which is risky. You have 3BB, which is nice, 6B, but his while staying punishment sucks. In sword stance, he has pretty good punishment, but doesn't have really any lows to be super threatening outside of the jumping A, which can be seeable by good players. And in the, spear stance, you have terrible punishment, but his while staying punishment is really good, but his standing punishment's awful. Like, you need to know these things. You need to know what strengths you have access to and what really good moves you have access to. It's not easy to know. Like in Sword, the B plus, like a B plus K, you have different moves in what stance. The Sword one, you have the B plus K, which is a super long range. Take this, that launcher. It's a good whiff punisher, really good for that. In Axe, of course, you have the Axe Low, which is really dumb. Also, with the 3 BB mix up, that lethal hits for some reason. And in Spear, you have a nice GI panic move, which is also nice. But all of these moves are launch punishable on block, so they're all risky. They are risky. So like I said, you need to know these things. Now in Soul Charge, if it was Soul Charge as well, he would probably be in easier, maybe even scrub mode, but normal as well, which is normally when you're going to spend your time in, you need to know what stance you're in, and again, it can be complicated. So you have to take that into consideration. But for the opponent who doesn't know what stance you're in, it's probably more annoying for them than it is for you. So, keep that in mind. Next we have Kilik. I think Kilik was here in average as well. I don't think I changed him. Not too much execution. Pretty solid character in general. You need to have some fundamentals with him. He's a relatively fundamental character in the game. But he's not crazy hard. He's relatively easy to pick up and play. He's actually pretty easy to pick up and play. But again, if you're playing against someone who knows how to fight Kilik, I just don't feel like Kilik has a lot of super amazing tools. I mean, not tools, but he's not the best character to use. His Soul Charge is very unique, and you need to know a little bit about it to do well in it, because his Soul Charge is risky because he does lose health while he's in it. So you have to keep that in mind when you can properly use his Soul Charge or his Soul Attack. When can you use his Super in the Soul Charge? You need to have some fundamentals when you can play solid tools. He is relatively easy to pick up. He doesn't have much execution, but you do need some solid fundamentals, and you need to know a little bit about Kilik to do successful with him. But I don't consider him hard. Mitsurugi, another character where it's just like, you need to have solid fundamentals. He doesn't have super amazing frame data. He's, again, relatively easy to pick up and play. Relatively. In higher levels of play, he's, again, harder to use. He has a lot of really risky lows, which is a big problem with him. Even though his 3B has a nice lethal hit. Has a teeny bit of execution with some of the combos, more specifically in Soul Charge. Has some execution that you need to keep in mind about. And you do need to know a little bit what you're doing to play a very solid Rugi. Most people can just, most good players can just stuck duck the character, which really makes him a problem. Makes him, have a weakness. His Sure Blade is also pretty nice. But yeah, he's pretty average. Again, he's hard to use at high level, of course, but not super ridiculously hard to pick up. Sophie, this was a character that some people wanted to put in easy. And like I said in the last one, and, I could see that. She is, again, another character that is pretty easy to pick up and play. And she has some solid stuff going for her. She's a very strong character. But the reason why I put her in average, like I said last time, she has execution. More specifically with the stab and some of her combos. So, that alone is kind of one of the reasons why I decided to put her up in average. Because, it's not easy to, consistently do 14-frame stabs. Or do them consistently, really good in combos. It's going to take a teeny bit of practice. It's not the easiest thing in the world to use. To do. But other than that, I don't consider her very hard. That's the only thing with her that I consider hard. Or not easy. And that's really why she is an average. If she didn't have that stuff, that execution, she would be an easy. Next we have Shangha. Shangha, another character where you need to know a little bit what you're doing. Has a teeny bit of execution, not too much though. You need to know when you can use her auto GIs, which are actually very strong. She has very strong auto GIs and lethal hits with those auto GIs. But you need to know when to place them. You need to know some of her stances, how you use those properly, what moves you can use. But the reason why I didn't put her in hard is because she does have some pretty brain dead tools, such as she's a very safe character. She has super safe launchers, which are really good. Her 12-frame CE is amazing. She's overall pretty solid in general, but she is also pretty vulnerable to people sidestepping her. Kind of like Rugi, she doesn't have super good, things that catch step. Maybe outside of 6A or 3A, but that's slower. And also, she doesn't have a very good soul charge. She doesn't have the best soul charge, so you need to know, like, how can you use it, or you might as well just stick to the CE, which might be harder to use, because, you know, soul charge is... Some characters' soul charge is pretty dumb, and hers is probably the worst in the game, arguably. Or actually, I think it is the worst in the game, even with the boss it got. But, yeah, not a super easy character, but I don't consider, like, super ultra mega hard. Next we have Yoshi. Yoshi, I think I had in hard, but the reason why I put him down in tier is because, like, he's very strong. He has a lot of very unique tools. He has, again, doesn't have too much crazy execution. No crazy super execution that he has. Also, he doesn't have, like a lot of tools that you really need to use. He has a couple of moves that are very solid and that are very effective. He has a very good full crouch mix-up. He's overall can be pretty fucking annoying to fight, but you do need to know, again, another character where you do need to know a few things to play him very well. You need to know, like, this. I guess you need to know some of the stances. You need to know a little bit about his soul charge. You need to know about his soul stealing moves, how those work. You know, but again, he's a super strong character, and he's all of his execution things that originally he did have in, like, let's say Soul Calibur 5. Most of them are gone now, so he's much easier to play in this game than he was in Soul Calibur 5, for sure. Alright, now we're going to get to the easy tier. This will be a very interesting tier. So, first up we got Astronaut. Now, Astronaut is another character I originally had in average, because the main reason is that, you know, he's another character that can be a little bit, you know, slow to get going. He has some problems there. However, I think he's easier than Nightmare because he actually has an I-12 while Nightmare doesn't. And his throws are really fucking good and really strong. And you don't need to use too many moves with him to do really well. And he doesn't have too much execution. I mean, the throws are some execution, but that's really about it. And, let's see. And yeah, he's overall relatively easy to pick up. Again, I could put him back in average, but... You know, I do think he's actually easier than I thought. He also has a very good soul charge. His soul tech isn't very good, though, but his soul charge is good. His CE is also solid as well. You know, the throw that you have to duck on, you know, before it comes out, which is very good. Overall, pretty solid character in general. But again, the reason why I didn't put him, like, in a scrub mode category is that, again, he can be sluggish to get going. Next, we have Guerrero. Guerrero, it's kind of like the Kazumi of Soul Calibur, very fundamental based, but I think he's a lot easier than Kazumi, in my opinion. You do need to have solid fundamentals to play a very good Geralt, but, like, there's nothing else really hard about him. He has some just frames that are, you know, that are not easy to use, but other than that, this character is not a hard character at all, and he's pretty solid. Nothing really much crazy to say about Guerrero. Guerrero, kind of the same thing. Well, not really the same thing. But another character, like, he actually reminds me more of Lars than 2B. Another character who's very easy to pick up, but can struggle a bit in the higher levels of play. Guerrero is basically the Soul Calibur Lars, basically. He's pretty easy to pick up. He only has one stance you need to know. Not really much execution. But again, does struggle in higher levels of play when people know how to fight him. But, you know, again, nothing too crazy to say about him. Sungmina, brain dead long range attacks, kind of like Ivy. I think she does a little bit better in close range than Ivy does, because she does have an I-12 down A, which is very good. The frames aren't the best on it, but it's still an I-12 down A, which is still very good. But again, still can struggle a little bit in close range. But at far range, that's where she really, again, is pretty fucking brain dead. And she has a lot of Oki shit, which her Oki is really good. She has some good mix-ups. Even though they were nerfed a little bit, they're still good. And again, almost no execution. Doesn't have much execution, honestly. And then we have Siegfried. Siegfried was a character I originally had in the scrub mode tier. The reason why I did push him up is, he has been getting nerfed a lot recently, and it's been making him a lot harder to use. He still has some pretty solid moves, like, you know, Ace Slide B, AGA. He has a little bit of execution with that stuff, but that's, again, nothing crazy. And you need to know some of the stances. I mean, you don't really need to know all of it. You don't really need it, but it is decent. It is understandable to know. But other than those two things, again, I don't consider him a super, super difficult character. I do think he is easier than Nightmare, because, again, he does have an I-12, while, again, Nightmare doesn't. So in closer range, he's also better. And he also has Dark Legacy, which helps him, which is also nice. Again, makes him, you know, very solid, more solid. But, again, that's all I think I have to say about Siegfried. I don't consider him very hard, but I don't consider him to be scrub mode anymore. And then finally, we do have the scrub mode tier. I mean, Inferno obviously doesn't count. He's not playable online. We all know about Inferno. But yeah, there's only 2 characters I put in scrub mode, and they are the same as last time. Zasalamel, I think Zasalamel is very, very easy to pick up and play. Basically no execution. Super high damage combos. Very, very good buttons. He tracks like a motherfucker. He has great mids, verticals, my bad. He doesn't have amazing lows, but that's not really what he's known for. So, you know, I would keep that in mind. But his curses are very, very good. Just a very solid character overall. And again, almost no work, in my opinion. The only thing I consider that you could consider hard with him is maybe understanding the curses. But even then, that's not very hard, in my opinion. Next we have, and finally, the final character, but not least, we have Cassandra. Cassandra, goddamn, this character is so fucking stupid. Another almost no execution character. Again, a little bit, but not, again, nothing crazy. This is a character you can literally just mash buttons with and can win. Her frame data is ridiculous. She has easily the best frames in the game. Even though they have nerfed it, she's been nerfed a little bit, but she's still a phenomenal character. Again, very easy to play. Almost no execution. Super good buttons. Divine Force is a very, very good addition. Her Soul Charge is brain dead as fuck. And yeah, I mean, at further ranges, she can struggle, but in close range, this character is a complete freaking monster. Complete monster. And her throws are very, very good too, even though they were nerfed. Still very, very good. And yeah, that is my updated Soul Calibur tier list. Yeah, I made a lot more changes to this tier list than I did in my Tekken tier list. I'm actually a lot happier with this tier list compared to the other one. And like I said, in the Tekken one, the Soul Calibur tier list got a lot of views, got a lot of support on that one. So thank you all so much for that. Again, let's see if we can get more views on this tier list. That would be great. I would really appreciate you guys. You know, drop a like, drop a comment. What y'all thought of this tier list? Did y'all think it was better than the last one? I personally thought it was for sure. And you know, I'm glad that I told y'all some of my thoughts on all the Soul Calibur characters. But yeah, I'm done for now. Thank you all for stopping by. This is Falcon, and peace out, everybody.